It's a bloodbath! Oh my god, he's calling for insurrection! It's all over! We're all gonna die because he said the bloodbath word! These were the actual reactions of our mainstream media over the weekend, and this was happening while Contemporary was going on, the cleanup episode we did on Saturday. Like, everything seemed as normal as it can be in this particular political environment while I was doing Contemporary, and when I click the off button, I just see bloodbath, 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 bloodbath. So we're going to talk about what actually happened there. Watch the full context clip of that, and, well, there's an interesting article from the Los Angeles Times that actually kind of defends where some of the conservatives are going on. Hey, when you cry wolf too much, it turns out bad. So we'll go over some of that, what's happening there, and what we do with that. In other news, and yes, this is going to be a very Trumpy episode, so, well, enjoy what we do here. Donald Trump's lawyers come forward and say they are probably not going to be able to make the $464 million bond in the civil fraud case. So we'll go over what's happening with that, what may happen, what Letitia James hopes would happen, and what the difference is between wealth and cash on hand, even though I am going to make a one-off video talking about that. I know I've been promising it since I started making one-off videos again, but we'll talk about that then, and we'll talk about that in the second major set of news stories as we go for the day. Texas is allowed to start enforcing border law in their state independent of the federal government. So rules the Supreme Court in a 7-2. So we'll go over what the split was and what the dissent was from the two justices that came out and dissented. And Lindsey Graham, much to the shock and chagrin of the Mogwai, meets with Zelensky and says he might have floated the idea of loans for the Ukraine. So we'll go over some of that, what that means, and where we go from there. It is going to be all of this and more over here on Contemporary. So strap yourselves in, grab a snack, get some friends in here, because this show only grows by word of mouth. And I haven't heard from you in a couple months, but I'm out right now, and I'm all fucked up. And you're calling my phone, and you're all alone, and I'm sensing some undertones. That's right, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. If you recognize some of those tones that you're hearing off the bat, that must mean that you are a fan of The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, which that is, of course, the forest theme from that particular game. But this particular track, called The Woods from DJ Cutman, is a medley of all three of the major Lost Woods themes from the Legend of Zelda series. If you like what you hear in the background, do make sure you go check out the Video Game Study Lounge playlist over on YouTube. It is copyright free. If you do stream yourself, you can use this. You can use the music to come back and put a little bit of background off of you here, because a lot of the other stuff out there that you would use for music is very much copyrighted. One of the fun parts about this is that a lot of video game stuff is in the public domain, which means it makes it really, really hard to copyright remixes and remasters and whatnot. Like when I was doing the Red and Ed show and KTZed Redemption, I used a lot of Jam and Sam Miller's remakes of David Wise songs from the Donkey Kong Country series, because they are all in public domain. And Jam and Sam Miller did a fantastic job remastering all that. But yeah, if you like what you hear there, Go listen to that. Of course, you hear the Olivia Rodrigo lyrics in the opening song lyric, because we're going to be talking about Olivia Rodrigo and what happened at her concert and where I feel about that. That is, did I put that on the regular, or did I put that on things I like, things I hate? That is on the regular news stack today, so we'll be talking about that. The Mogwai is already calling for a Thursday show. I don't think we're going to get there. I think we're going to get done. Because we just did a Saturday show, and we caught up on all the news from the Saturday show, I've actually got kind of a light stack today, honestly, weirdly enough. After seeing the 60, 70, 80 tabs that we've been seeing in the last few shows, this is a fairly light one, and I think we're going to get through it all today. I don't think we're going to do a Thursday one this week, which is good because, like, when I started looking around my place on Monday, you could tell that I worked every night and then worked every day on top of it, too. You could tell, definitely. And I started cleaning things up on Monday. So, yeah, it was a bit of a mess around here still, and I still have to go back and pick some things up. So, I mean, you can see a little bit behind me there, the guitar and the jacket, and I think my dress shirt is sitting over on the chair behind me there. But we're not here to criticize how I live in this tiny little closet here right now as I search for a new home to move into. We're here to talk about the news, and while I say it's a light stack, there is still plenty of that here, so we got a couple hours. Strap yourselves in. Let's see what it is that we can talk about here today. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming from great creators like Steven Ignoramus in the Daily Ignoramus and KTZed in Overruled with KTZed. Daily Ignoramus is daily, obviously, except he's only doing a Friday stream this week. He has got some pre-existing commitments to deal with throughout the week here today, and KTZed is on every Sunday with a new crime story, so go check them both out. KTZed, of course, you guys know as being my former co-host for the KTZed Redemption, not the Red Net Show. So go and check that out, and let's get into the news of the day, which, of course, as we saw from the opening, is Bloodbathgate. You can see that from the title, and you could hear that when I did the cold open. So let's get started. News scene. Alright, let's do this. Let's get the live chat up here. Make sure, you guys, if you see something you like and you want to comment on it, the more you talk, the more you comment, the more we get moved up to the front of the page. And we've got Izzy Busy 8907 joining us over on Twitch along with the Mogwai. So, Mogwai, of course, being active as well. Insurrection 2, Part 2, Insurrectioner. Oddly enough, speaking of Part 2 and Part Duh, I was, this is not going to be on Things I Like, Things I Hate tonight because I haven't seen the movie, but, like, remember in the 80s and 90s when they did all these parody movies about the tropes in the main movie types? I just saw that Hot Shots and Hot Shots Part Duh are on Paramount Plus, and I've never actually seen them. That's going to change this weekend. I'm going to go watch those. Let's see. Mogwai says Thursday show. I don't think we're going to. I think we're going to get through it all. Mogwai says, I met with Zelensky and Sugar. Them Ukrainian boys are very nice. We made a deal to help each other out, if you know what I mean. Alright, let's get into it. I was a young kid then, says Izzy Busy. Well, I was not that much older than you, because I know how old you are. I was only a few years older at the time. Alright, let's get into it. Starting with PBS NewsHour. The Public Broadcasting System, which, by the way, is brought to you from support from viewers like you. Trump warns of bloodbath if he isn't reelected at Ohio rally for Senate candidate Moreno. Now, that's not actually what happened. But I think between Saturday and now, we kind of all know that already. Do I have an author given on this one? Yes, I do. It's just not in the usual place it is. From Meg Kinnard of the Associated Press, Jill Colvin of the Associated Press. Former President Trump claimed that he, not President Biden, will protect Social Security and warned of a bloodbath if he loses in November as he campaigned for Senate candidate Bernie Moreno in Ohio, which, by the way, if you are in Ohio, stop watching this. Go vote. Your polls are going to close really soon. If you haven't voted yet today and you're in Ohio, get out there. Go! Go! I'll still be here when you get back. Hopefully. Trump, speaking on a wind-whipped airfield outside of a Dayton Saturday, praised his chosen candidate in the race as an America First champion and a political outsider who spent his entire life building up Ohio communities. He's going to be a warrior in Washington, Trump said, days after securing enough delegates to clinch the 2024 Republican nomination. Moreno faces Secretary of State Frank LaRose and State Senator Matt Dolan in Tuesday's GOP primary. LaRose and Moreno have aligned themselves with the pro-Trump faction of the party, while Dolan is backed by the more establishment Republicans, including Mike DeWine and Rob Portman. Saturday's rally was hosted by the Buckeye Values PAC, a group backing Moreno's candidacy, but Trump used the stage to deliver a profanity-filled version of his usual rally speech that again painted an apocalyptic picture of the country if Biden wins a second term. Well, I mean, I'm sitting out here preparing for him to win a second term. I hope that he doesn't, but I'm not going to be caught with my pants down if he does either, so... the Mogwai says, donate and get a Bloodbath mug from PBS. From viewers like you. If I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be, like, they cut right there. You can see where they cut. Right there. Hold on. My soul's healed. It's like one of my favorite tracks on this playlist. Yeah, we're not going to go through the whole thing. Soul Healing is the name of that track, by the way, if you guys are interested. Great track. And my soul is healed. Look at that. But I mean, going back to what I was looking at this, he warned while talking about the impact of offshoring on the country's auto industry and his plans to increase tariffs on foreign-made cars. And that's the most honest part of this article. Like, they literally cut out the part. It's going to be a bloodbath for the whole auto industry. There's a dash right there. If you're listening on the audio platform right now, there is a gigantic double-wide dash, and I've got it highlighted on the screen. Biden campaign spokesperson James Singer accused Trump of doubling down on his threats of political violence. But, again, that's not what happened. He wants another January 6th, but the American people are going to give him another electoral defeat this November because they continue to reject his extremism, his affection for violence, and his thirst for revenge, Singer charged in a statement, which is purely campaign. Trump campaign spokesperson Stephen Cheng said that Trump had clearly been talking about the impact of a second Biden term on the auto industry and broader economy. Which is, by the way, what is behind that dash? The Mogwai says, you ever get the feeling that there's a glitch in the Matrix, but instead of a black cat, we just get the same shitstorm? Well, I ask you, how similar was the shitstorm? Was it the same shitstorm? Yeah, I do feel like sometimes when I read some of these articles, looking up and saying, whoa, deja vu. Crooked Joe Biden and his campaign are engaging in deceptively out-of-context editing. Trump repeatedly noticed his difficulty reading from his teleprompters, which could be seen visibly whipping in the 35-mile-an-hour wind gusts. But again, he didn't have difficulty reading it. You guys just literally cut out the auto industry part. You dishonest fucking hacks. Whip it real good. A one-time Trump critic, Moreno, A wealthy Cleveland businessman supported Marco Rubio for president in the 2016 primary and once tweeted that listening to Trump was like watching a car accident that makes you sick, but you can't stop looking. That is honestly, even though he's fishing for his endorsement right now, that is honestly probably the best description. In 2021, NBC News first reported on an email exchange around the time of Trump's first presidential run in which Moreno referred to Trump as a lunatic and a maniac. So, they're already trying to push the divide into this, and, well, it's completely dishonest. CBS News said the same thing in Ohio campaign rally. Trump says there will be a bloodbath if he loses the November election. Former President Trump claimed that he and not Biden will protect Social Security and warned of a bloodbath. Wynwood Bearfield, this is the same article. Except they use dots instead of a dash. No, it is different. It's just the opening was the same. If I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country, he warned while talking about the impact of offshoring the country's auto industry and his plan to impose a 100% tariff on foreign-made cars. Later, Trump said, if the election isn't won, I'm not sure that you'll ever have another election in this country. And then they went over with the difficulty reading from the teleprompter's bullshit. And again, completely ignoring the fact that they cut a large sentence out of that speech. Right there, and they showed it because they have to put the dots there, otherwise they can't say paraphrasing. So what actually happened? Well, we're going to start with the Daily Wire because they have video of this. Media's wall-to-wall coverage of Trump bloodbath comment delivers zero context. From Virginia Kruta, and that was one of the copes too, by the way, that came out of all this was, well, why do so many people have to take Trump out of context? Can't he just say what he means? Why do they always have to say out of context? Well, because that was all out of context. And then I caught, I forget what it was, but I caught Olbermann in something like that too. Oh yeah, the assassination one. I didn't put that on the stack. But Olbermann, when the Donald said he was treated about the same as Abraham Lincoln was, referring to Lincoln's assassination, Olbermann came out and said, well, there's always hope that you get treated the same as Abraham Lincoln. And then he had to go back and, hey, you guys are taking this out of context. All right, multiple media outlets and liberal pundits and pretty much everyone who can't stand former President Trump engaged in a virtual feeding frenzy over the weekend, frothing at the mouth over his campaign rally comment, promising a bloodbath if his 2024 presidential bid is unsuccessful. Anybody reading the headlines published from another mainstream outlets might believe that Trump was not just predicting but calling for political violence if he were to lose another election. Yeah, Trump would never be caught dead at a play. I like that. That's funny. The New York Times, Trump says migrants are not people and predicts a bloodbath if he loses. Yeah, they tried to pull that one back up too. The Guardian, Trump predicts bloodbath if he loses the election and claims Biden beat Obama. NBC News, Trump says there'll be a bloodbath if he loses the election. Politico, Trump says country faces a bloodbath if Biden wins in November. Rolling Stone, Trump says there'll be a bloodbath and elections will end if he isn't reelected. Biden's re-election campaign openly accused Trump of wanting another riot on Capitol Hill, a repeat of what happened on January 6, 2021. The campaign blasted Trump as a loser who doubles down on his threats of political violence, adding he wants another January 6th. And this is the statement, by the way. From Biden-Harris HQ. Tonight, Donald Trump said there would be a bloodbath if he wasn't elected, and that if he lost, there would be no more elections. After opening the general election by meeting with authoritarian leaders and rallying alongside conspiracy theorists, Donald Trump continues to praise dictators, promise to pardon political violence, and launch racist attacks against black and brown Americans. Lie, 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 and lie. The only thing that's truthful in that sentence is that he has promised to pardon what they're calling political violence, but in fact was a peaceful rally that got out of hand. A riot, but not insurrection, and not political violence. It's why last night, Trump's own former Vice President, Mike Pence, who Trump supporters called to hang for not overturning the election, came out against Trump. This is who Trump is, a loser who gets beat by over 7 million votes, honk honk, and then instead of appealing to a wider mainstream audience, doubles down on his threats of political violence. He wants another January 6th, but the American people are going to give him another electoral defeat this November because they continue to reject his extremism, his affection for violence, and his thirst for revenge. Honk, 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 honk. So that's their statement. But while those outlets were all too happy to share the one cherry-picked line, Trump predicts bloodbath if he loses in November, they were equally happy to leave out the fact that at the time, he was specifically talking about the automobile industry and the economic impact of a company owned by the communist China building cars in Mexico to avoid U.S. tariffs. They have the full context here. Let's listen.
Mexico has taken, over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it, went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole... That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine,
Yeah, and that's the biggest part of the problem is there's a bit of desperation out there, and I will say that. And we were talking a bit about this last week too, where it's just they're jumping on every little thing because it's not looking good for Joe Biden right now. Now, and as I've said, I am making a one-off video. I keep promising I'm going to make it, but then I don't make it because, well, we do 3 shows in a row in a week. That's one of the things that happen. Of a list of things that the Donald would have to do where I would vote for him. I would vote for him, but there are a bunch of things that his campaign has to do between now and November before I would put my name to this candidate. And I really doubt that they're all going to get done, but they do all have to be done before I can comfortably put my name to him. But I'm also, like, Biden is fucked. He's not getting my vote. And the populist wing of the GOP needs to stand up like right now and start paying attention because they are fucked beyond fucked in the far-flung future unless they come back down and sit down and realize that what's going to happen in 2024, if my predictions are correct, is going to be a massive protest vote for Biden. It's not necessarily that people want these policies back and they want us to go back and see all this again. It's that they realize that their life was better under this, and while they may not like the guy, they're going to hold their nose and say, okay, well, we're going to go back, and they're going to do the same thing that they did in 2020. Honk honk against Trump. And it's going to be go back and hold their nose and vote for the corporate Democrat because they thought that their lives were so terrible under this guy. And again, I say, you guys are going to have to figure out how to get some positive ideas out here because you cannot you cannot protest vote against the corporate Democrats forever and expect them to keep losing. especially when the corporate Democrats have all the media apparati on their side. But anyway, that is the full context, and where they did come back and try to cling on to this was, I mean, that does sound like desperation right there. And we'll talk about that a little bit more with the LA Times article. Let's keep going, check the live chat. The Mogwai says, to be honest, Mike Pence didn't endorse Mike Pence either. That's a fair point, honestly. And we're starting to see some of the corrections across the media. CNN, Trump warns of bloodbath for the auto industry in the country if he loses the election. Now, they're still kind of halfway between, but they're actually coming out and actually mentioning the auto industry. Unlike the first two articles we looked at, Arik John, Kit Mar, and Elena Treen will read briefly into this one. Former President Trump warned Saturday that if he were to lose the election, it would be a bloodbath for the U.S. auto industry in the country. The remark came as Trump promised a 100% tariff on cars made outside the U.S., arguing that domestic auto manufacturing would be protected only if he is elected. The comment came in the midst of an extended riff on the auto industry, unions, and the transition to electric vehicles and auto plants in Mexico. Trump has sought to woo auto workers and appeal to voters in the Rust Belt. By hammering on trade tariffs and EV manufacturing, Trump told CNBC this month that he would place a 50% tariff on cars made in Chinese plants in Mexico, and now he's coming back to try to boost that up to 100. A little bit of a riff off of this. A little bit of a sidestep here. I am anti-tariff. For the most part. Like, if the entire world would go on to free trade, we would actually be able to come back out and probably improve a lot of the wealth of a lot of us across the world. Even maybe letting some of that trickle out into the third world at some point. But that's not the reality that we live in. And this is, none of this is new, and none of this starts with China either. That's the fucked up part about all of this. Like, back in the 90s, GM and Ford, and to an extent Daimler Chrysler, even though I think Mitsubishi actually wound up taking over most of them, did woo and buy into some of the Japanese car companies to avoid some of the tariffs with them. There actually was a Chevrolet Cavalier that was sold in Japan with the Toyota moniker off of this because, well, let's be completely frank about everything. We can take away all the tariffs, and we did for the most part, all the duties and tariffs on foreign vehicles coming into this country, but they did not do the same for us. In fact, there are a number of things, not just cars, but that seems to be one of the bigger big ticket items that everybody seems to have, and where the market interference seems to take the most hold is the automotive. It's a big ticket item, like 10,000 things that cost 10 cents at Walmart isn't going to add up to a brand new car at this point. And all 10,000 of those 10-cent things that you buy at Walmart were all made in China. But, and I cited the Cavalier that was sold in Japan under the Toyota moniker. There is, I don't know if it was 100%, but there was a massive tariff for the longest time on American cars into Japan. Meanwhile, we were importing many of their cars and selling them duty-free over here through the 70s and into the 80s. And some of that started to come to a stop in the 90s, but then Toyota started building manufacturing plants over here to try to avoid that same duty. Meanwhile, again, not letting GM or Ford or Chrysler get a foothold in their country and still putting a massive duty on cars coming in to their country. Germany actually did the same thing. Although I don't know that they do have anything over here where they're building on our soil. Volvo truck is another one, where technically the final assembly is still considered to be in Sweden. But that's just the final assembly of the cab. The cab is built in Sweden, shipped over here, and put on a frame over in this country, in Allentown, Pennsylvania. But because of the way that the cab is configured and done, they can't put the number 1 as the first digit of the VIN. I know a little bit about the automotive industry. I was in it forever. $50% tariff on anything made in a Chinese plant in Mexico, and they are, by the way, trying to bring in like the Xpeng and things like that, the EVs that they make in China as a rival to Tesla, and introduce them to the US market. Thus far, trade commissions and highway safety ratings have made that nay impossible, but the day is coming. Do keep that in mind. CBS with a video clip. Fallout continues over Trump's bloodbath remarks in Ohio rally. Let's watch and listen. We won't do the whole, I don't know how long this is, but as slow as the bar is moving, it's pretty long. Yeah, it's almost a 10-minute clip. We'll watch a little bit of it, though.
Former President Donald Trump still facing criticism for those controversial comments he made at a campaign rally over the weekend. Now his former Vice President Mike Pence is refusing to endorse him. And the state of former President Trump's finances aren't looking that good right now. His lawyers now say today it's, quote, a practical impossibility to secure a bond for his $464 million civil fraud judgment. Meanwhile, President Biden is busy campaigning and spending time in the Oval Office. His campaign says they raised $53 million in February. Today, the president also spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about humanitarian aid needed in Gaza. Finn Gomez and Jake Rosen join us now. Finn is our political director here at CBS News. Jake, a top-notch campaign reporter. Let's begin by listening to former President Donald Trump's comments over the weekend at his rally.
Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
Finn, what's the Trump campaign's response today to how this is all playing out? It's a controversy that's sparking criticism from Democrats. Some Republicans have urged Trump to use different kinds of words, even if he's talking about the context of the automobile industry.
They say that, and I spoke to several members close to Trump today, and they say that this has been strongly taken out of context. They believe that this is an issue that he's been railing on for since the 80s, and they believe that the bloodbath comments, he was referring specifically to the auto industry. Of course, Jake was there, and and you talk to others, and critics say that this is essentially a dog whistle to his base. But among the Trump advisors,
I always wondered something. Have you ever noticed that only Democrats seem to be able to hear a dog whistle? Has anybody noticed that other than me? Just me?
They believe that this was specifically about the auto industry.
So this is one part of the rally. Jake, you were there on the ground covering it for CBS News. Put aside the controversy over this specific passage of the speech, what exactly is Trump doing right now as the general election campaign ramps up to stoke his base, to maybe underscore certain grievances? What's the read from digesting it all from the site?
Well, I think the big thing, Bob, is what he did at the beginning of the rally on Saturday. And it was saluting to the Justice for All song, which is a song that features Donald Trump and also some of the January 6th defendants held in the D.C. jail. He saluted the campaign PA announcer that basically calls Trump on the stage, said that they were hostages. Trump repeated that at the beginning of the speech. And he also saluted as a video played showing the violence and destruction on that day of police officers being injured. And I think that's a really important thing when we consider the kind of 3,000-foot view here of Trump's Trump's claims on Saturday and Trump's comments about bloodshed and bloodbath. I just think that's a really important thing to remember going into his grievances on 2020 and how he repeated, that the election was rigged even just a couple minutes ago on a radio show interview. But he did admit Saturday that he did lose the election, but that grievance is 100% still there.
Yeah, he said he lost it, but that grievance is still there. We trust us. We know. Now, by the way, is one of the things that's on my list of things that Donald Trump needs to do if he wants to get my vote in November is stop bringing up 2020. Forward. That's the direction we need to move. We can't sit back and rehash and relitigate 2020 forever. We get it. It sucked. Trust me, my wallet does not look anywhere near as good right now as it did in 2019. I know. It sucked. It blew. But I mean, this is full out dishonest. Politico even coming back and walking back their original statements. Trump's bloodbath tirade contained the warning on Chinese cars. Here are the facts. Let's see. China's building a couple massive plants. We're going to put a 100% tariff. Trump's comments came during a portion of the speech where he's blasting leadership of the UAW, whose leaders have endorsed Biden despite their own concerns about the shift to electric vehicles. The UAW's leaders want to do this all-electric nonsense, Trump said, before adding inaccurately, they're all made in China. In fact, companies like Tesla and Volkswagen make EVs in the states, such as California, Tennessee. Well, that answers a question we had earlier, because Volkswagen making EV in the United States means that it's a German company making an EV in the United States, and others are imported from countries like South Korea. That is inaccurate. That's absolutely correct. Although, to see Politico make a mention of Tesla in a complimentary manner, because Elon man bad, is always a little bit funny to see. But, I mean, the facts are there. It's an EV. As much as they don't want it to be. Does China sell electric cars in the U.S.? Not exactly. No Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers sell consumer-grade cars inside the U.S. under their own brand names. The closest is Polestar, a Sweden-based EV maker that's majority owned by a Chinese company, Geely, and sells cars in the U.S. that were made in China. Geely owns the Volvo car brand. That I didn't know, because I know they don't own the truck brand. Mack owns that. Actually, I think it's the opposite way around. I think Volvo owns the Mack line, but another Chinese company, BYD, surpassed Tesla this year to become the world's biggest maker of EVs, but it does not sell passenger vehicles in the U.S. It does sell commercial trade electric trucks and buses inside the U.S. However, again, there is NHTSA regulations that make it near impossible for Chinese to hold up to the standards, but they will find a way to get up to those standards at some point. That's not going to be a forever thing. And I would honestly probably put money down that somewhere within 2025 they start to meet the TSA standards to put vehicles on our highway in a passenger capacity. And, well, to never be not opportunistic, ABC News. Trump seeks to fundraise off bloodbath controversy. Wouldn't you? Look, they're taking me out of context. They're very afraid. They want me to lose. Do you want me to lose? No. You don't want me to lose? Just send me $5 into my campaign. We'll go to the RNC. We'll take these people down. I would do the same thing. All right, 2 more on this controversy. Then we'll move on to the $464 million question. but a surprising one coming from the LA Times. Did I archive this already? No, I did not. Is it because I'm a moron? Yes, it is. Is it already archived? Yes, it is. Did Trump literally threaten a bloodbath? No, and claiming he did only helps his campaign. This is from the LA Times, by the way, keep in mind, who are no friends to the Donald. But they're absolutely right. If you continue to cry wolf constantly, well, when there's an actual wolf, when he actually says something egregious, then suddenly nobody's going to believe you anymore. Jonah Goldberg. At a rally in Ohio on Saturday, Trump said that if he's not elected in November, there'll be a bloodbath. That he said that much is true, having actually read the text of his remarks. However, I do not believe he was threatening, elect me president or the streets will run red with blood. But that's exactly how many, particularly in the media, interpreted his comment. In Ohio campaign rally, Trump says there'll be a bloodbath if he loses November election. Read a CBS News headline. Trump says country faces a bloodbath if Biden wins in November, announced Politico. In context, though, two things are pretty clear. First, Trump meant re-electing President Biden would be a catastrophe or bloodbath for the auto industry. Second, his comments were typically incoherent mess. Trump defenders note correctly that the term bloodbath often is used metaphorically. It's commonplace in coverage of Wall Street, and Trump's recent purge of Republican National Committee staff was dubbed a bloodbath by many of the news outlets, now aghast at Trump's use of the word. What Trump's defenders elide is that the former president has forfeited any presumption of good intentions. Trump winks at and even celebrates violence all the time. He fawns over authoritarians and insists presidents, like rogue cops, should have complete immunity to commit crimes. When Capitol was under siege by a mob acting on his behalf, he declined to intervene for hours. He even defended the mob's chance of hanging Mike Pence. Everything in this paragraph is a lie, by the way. Heck, Trump even once celebrated those great patriots of January 6th during the same rally Saturday, declaring those convicted of assault and other crimes hostages. If these convicted criminals are hostages, where are the ransom demands? Well, the ransom demand is, don't elect this guy. In short, Trump, who routinely distorts other statements and plays footsie with violence, doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt when he uses terms like bloodbath. But as Clint Eastwood's character says in Unforgiven, deserves got nothing to do with it. Where I disagree with both Trump's defenders and many media critics in this brouhaha is that I don't think the press being dishonest about interpreting Trump's use of the word, as evidenced by the absurd 2011 media frenzy over whether Sarah Palin's crosshairs on a congressional map incited a madman to shoot then-Rep. Gabby Giffords, journalists often are desperate to find a confirmation of their sincerely held views. And elected Democrats, and paid shills, are often eager to egg them on. Headline writers, don't outsmart yourself, Senator Brian Schatz tweeted Saturday night. Just do Trump promises bloodbath if he doesn't win election, many obliged. I think those who see Trump as a singular threat to democracy, norms and decency, and so on have some good arguments and evidence to back up their convictions. But if that's what journalists believe, they have all the more reason not to indulge themselves and make the media the story, which in this case it actually completely became. It may seem counterintuitive, but members of the Trump-hating press would help their own cause by being more restrained in their coverage. And while I would make an idealistic case for more responsible reporting, I suspect appealing to the media's more cynical impulse to advance their personal beliefs has more power. Trump actually benefits enormously from media overreaction to his irresponsible rhetoric. The people who instantly believed reports Trump was threatening carnage have already decided to vote against him. That's it, right there. Those aren't the people who can still be persuaded one way or the other, the people who will decide elections. Every time the media exaggerates or misleads on a specific story, it provides an opportunity for Trump and his Praetorian Guard. And again, he's doing the rhetoric thing and squashing some of his credibility in doing this. To claim the media exaggerate or mislead on every story This has been a go-to strategy for Trump world from the Russian collusion story onward, and it's worked. Well, that's because the Russian collusion story was a fabrication. Most persuadable voters dislike both Trump and Biden. If the goal is to convince these so-called double haters to vote against Trump or for Biden, the media should get out of Trump's way. We live in a moment when claiming to be the victim of the media is a badge of honor. And no one in American politics is better at playing the martyr than Trump. In a very, very cynical way of doing this, Jonah Goldberg is right in this article. But he has to come in here and do what he's telling the media not to do and exaggerate and blow up everything that Trump has ever done and say that it's the most evil thing in the world, which I find absolutely hilarious, the fact that he's doing this. But yes, it is easy now to come back in and discredit anything the media says about him because they ran with this. Getting caught cutting it out of context. And Salon, making Jonah Goldberg's point. We'll read just briefly into this one. Trump's call for a bloodbath was literal. Let's not waste time pretending it was ambiguous. The problem being, the majority of people who are reading Salon, present company exclude. Well, technically I will say present company included because I've already decided not to vote for the Donald, but not for the reasons that are in this article or anything else that Salon brought up. I have actual concerns with him and spending. It's mostly spending. But the majority of the people who are going to read this article have already decided not to vote for him. They're just looking for something to try and wave in front of the faces of their Trump-loving relatives. Look, see, he said bloodbath! And Salon gets clicks for confirming their bias. So that was bloodbath. 47 minutes of bloodbath. And we've still got more Trump news to go over. All right. From CNN. Trump is unable to make $464 million bond in civil fraud case, his lawyers tell court. From Kara Scannell and Jeremy Herb. Former President Trump can't find an insurance company to underwrite his bond to cover the massive judgment against him in the New York Attorney General's civil fraud case, his lawyers told the New York Appeals Court. Right there, we have headline makes one case, which has led hashtag Trump is broke to be trending on X right now, to the first paragraph mostly disproving it. It appears that yes, he can come up with the cash right now. It's just the fact that because it's in an appeals court and has to sit in a bond, he can't find an insurance company to come back and back it up. The Chubb Group apparently can't come back and throw up a bond for $464 million. Trump's attorneys said that he has approached 30 underwriters to back the bond, which is due at the end of this month. The amount of the judgment with interest exceeds $464 million, and very few bonding companies will consider a bond of anything approaching that magnitude, Trump's lawyers wrote. Trump himself was ordered to pay $454 million. The $464 million includes the disgorgement for his adult sons, Don Jr. and Eric. An insurance broker, Gary Giulietti, who testified for Trump during the civil fraud trial, signed an affidavit stating securing a bond in the full amount is a practical impossibility. Kind of like to see why that guy doesn't come back and underwrite it. That's the part that actually surprises me a little bit, because there were a large number of the banks that he did great business with. Now, of course, they're not insurance companies, so I don't know how the licensing goes, but I'm a little surprised that I'm not seeing more of these people not step up to come back and try to insure this or find a way to insure this. Because they benefited from the business relationship that he's being sued for in this case. Although I'm sure that if anybody in New York comes back to try to underwrite this, Letitia James is sitting over there with a red pen, ready to revoke their business license or take them in for the same thing. I'm sure that's a case too. Potential underwriters are seeking cash to back the bond, but properties, according to Trump's lawyers. Trump's lawyers have asked the appeals court to delay posting the bond until his appeal of the case is over, arguing the value of Trump's properties far exceed the judgment. If the appeals court rules against him, Trump asked the court to delay his posting of the bond until his appeal to New York's highest court is heard. Trump said Monday he thought it was practically impossible for him to post the bond. In a post on Truth Social, he claimed the size of the bond is unconstitutional. There is an argument to be made about that, by the way. Un-American, unprecedented, and practically impossible for any company, including one as successful as mine. The bonding companies have never heard of such a bond of this size before, nor do they have the ability to post such a bond even if they wanted to. So there are a few things with this, and again, the hashtag Trump is broke is going and trending on X right now as we speak, based mostly on this story. And some of this comes as what the difference is between wealth and cash on hand. And I've talked about this on this channel before, and when I started making one-off videos again, one of the first topics that I thought of, even though I haven't made the video yet, was what the difference is between cash on hand and wealth. And when we listen to our friends, and especially in the progressive left, but on the left in general, young people who don't have the opportunity to really own property based on financial situation or student loans or inability to get and hold a job in a market that looks like the one that we're in right now. When we look at all these things, these people think that Elon Musk and Donald Trump or Jeff Bezos is another big one. When they say that they're a billionaire, it means that they have cash on hand. That they're like Scrooge McDuck and they have a huge 40-story tower filled with gold coins, and they just get up and open up the vault door in it and dive in and swim around in it all day. They don't have that. They would be foolish to have that because, especially with the rate of inflation, that cash loses value every single day. Most of them have very, very little cash on hand. I made the point with my coworker the one day because, obviously, you guys know I live in a closet. I don't actually own a piece of property yet. Working on that. But I was talking to my coworker about this, and I pointed out, I'm obviously not going to give the address. I don't know the address, honestly. But I said, you and your old boy, I'd say in today's market, given where-ish you live, you're worth about, the house is worth about $250,000, $300,000 or so. She agreed with me. I said, if you needed to in an emergency, would you be able to pop up $250,000 that day? You're worth that much money because of the equity in the house. But would you be able to drop that money in a second? And she said, of course not. We would have to sell the house, and we'd have to make sure that we actually got that amount of money out of the house in order to have that kind of money in a day, and then move on top of it. When these billionaires come out, that's the same reason that I hate the analogy of, if we just, Ben Shapiro likes to use this one. If we forcefully took all the wealth from everybody in the world and redistributed it evenly among everybody again, in the next 10 years, 9 out of the top 10 billionaires would be in the top again. Because of what they would do with the money, how they would do it, and the fact that the people on the bottom would just come back and say, oh, look, all this money I have, I have a spending spree, and they'd go spend the money with the people who were at the top to begin with. The people who know how to make a product, employ people, and utilize that product to enhance their own wealth. The people who have practice with this. But I always hate that analogy because you would first have to turn all the yachts and buildings, means of production, etc., into cash. One of my favorite ones is when they say, well, we should be able to seize the yachts and take those away from the billionaires and redistribute it out to the other people. Okay, who can buy a yacht? Who can buy a yacht from a billionaire? Another billionaire. That's the only person who can. That's how you get the cash out of the person, but then just another billionaire has the yacht. I know, again, I'm taking a lot of my material for the one-off video. But all this in a roundabout way to come back out and tell you that no, it's very unlikely that the Donald has $450 million of cash just laying around in his bedroom. Could he get it? Yeah. He could probably go sell a couple buildings in foreign countries and have that today yet. Take a little bit of hit on the income and the business income, but he could have that cash today out of an entity that the city of New York can't touch, or the state of New York can't touch, because it's in a foreign country. But as far as this goes, and I know that Letitia James is probably looking around here, eyeing and licking her chops, looking at Trump Tower, which that in and of itself, if they seize that, would cover the $450 million and then some. But in the overvaluing case, I'm sure the state of New York would come out and say, oh, the Trump Tower, we're going to seize that, but yeah, hey, that's only worth $1 million or $5 million. Let's say $5 million. You still owe $460 million. Oh, guess we got to take Mar-a-Lago. Oh, that's weird. That's only worth $9 million. Sorry. Don't make the rules. Sorry. And just keep going down that line. I heard the craziest conspiracy theory about that too, coming from those on the right who have said that what James intends to do is to seize Trump Tower for much, much less than its market value, kick all the businesses out, which would destroy Midtown, and then fill the whole building with illegal immigrants, which would further destroy Midtown. The NIMBY is there. The Not in My Backyarders there. Holy shit, do you understand what that would do to them? I don't. I do. ABC News. Trump says he might be forced to sell assets at fire sale prices to satisfy $464 million bond in civil fraud case. From Surin Kim, Peter Charalambo, and Lali Ibsa. Former President Trump is continuing to rail against the $464 million judgment in his New York civil fraud case, claiming Arthur Engeron is trying to take away his rights and he could be forced to sell his property at fire sale prices. Judge Engeron actually wants me to put up hundreds of millions of dollars for the right to appeal his ridiculous decision, Trump posted on his social media platform on Tuesday morning. In other words, he's trying to take my appellate rights away from me, Trump said in part, which, again, that's actually not very far off. I'd be forced to mortgage or sell great assets, perhaps at fire sale prices, and if and when I win the appeal, they'd be gone. Does that make any sense? Trump is facing insurmountable difficulties in obtaining a bond to satisfy the judgment, the former president's attorney said Monday in a new appellate court filing. Last month, Trump's lawyers asked for a stay of the enforcement and offered to instead secure a $100 million bond. A New York appellate judgment denied Trump's emergency application for a stay last month, but a panel of judges is considering Trump's request for a delay. AG James pushed back on the request, arguing Trump and his co-defendants will attempt to evade the enforcement of the judgment or to make enforcement more difficult. Moreover, there's a significant risk that, absent a full bond or deposit, defendants will attempt to evade enforcement of the judgment or to make enforcement more difficult after an appeal. Senior Assistant Solicitor Dennis Fan said last week, arguing that Trump should pay the judgment or get a bond for the full amount. While Trump Organization General Counsel Alan Garten said Monday that Trump is financially stable and maintains substantial assets, the magnitude of the judgment would require him to use his real estate as collateral for the bond. According to the filing, more than 30 companies have declined to assist with Trump's bond, which the former president is attempting to secure using a combination of property and cash. Again, if they're in New York, I think that there's probably at least a 50% chance that there's been a threat from Letitia James that if you put this bond up, we will shut your business down one way or the other. You like your business license? Well, then don't put the bond up. I've got a feeling that conversation's been had at some point. And our friends at NPR are saying, here's what happens if Trump can't pay his $454 million bond. This is from All Things Considered from Andrea Bernstein. And remember, NPR is your national progressive radio, so hit that donate button because they are only 10% government funded, and ad revenue cannot keep their authors in there to tell you how evil Donald Trump is. So hit that donate button, otherwise you might not know how evil Donald Trump is. NPR, never printing reality. National Progressive Radio, let's see what it is that they have to say. Former President Trump needs to arrange $454 million bond. We know that. How did he come to owe? We know that. Why does Trump have to come up with the money now? Because they won't let him appeal unless he has it in full. Trump says he's a billionaire. Why can't he come up with the money himself? We covered that earlier. The deadline is Monday. What does Trump do if the appeals court doesn't rule his way? He can appeal to the highest court and ask the court to stay the judgment. If they don't, he can ask a benefactor, or he could try to stall some more until he comes into the money from the upcoming sale of his social media company. Or he could, though it has many disadvantages, declare bankruptcy. But the New York AG has been clear, if Trump doesn't pay, she will move to seize assets. Which, as Tim Pool pointed out, and I myself have pointed out, may have been a part of the endgame to begin with. If he does not have the funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, she said, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets. Trump's non-cash assets run to $3 billion, Forbes estimates. So there's plenty of value there. The law limits the AG to seizing properties that were part of the case. But there's about 24 of those, everything from Doral Golf Club to 40 Wall Street to Trump Tower. She's not limited to New York properties, though there are extra steps if she chooses to go out of state. She could, in theory, send a sheriff or a marshal to enforce the judgment, and that brings on another legal process, with many more opportunities for the delay. And again, I point out the fact that Forbes says $3 billion. I would bet that by the time James is done making her individual assessment of the value of the properties, there's not going to be $400 million of value to be seized. Oh, no. Doral Golf Course? Oh, what does Forbes know? That's not worth, and that's not a widely publicized number, so I'm just going to throw something out there. Let's say, for an example, Doral Golf Course is listed by Forbes as $750 million. Letitia James comes in and says, no, $10 million. Nope, that's it. That's all we think we can get out of it, so that's the fair market value. We said so. All right, Pence news. Mike Pence From ABC News, Mike Pence won't endorse Trump in 2024. It should come as no surprise. From Surin Kim, Labby Kathy, and Lali Ipsa. Did we not just read an article from these same three people? Two of the three people. Hey, those two names have been in like every ABC article we've read today. That's so weird. Former Vice President Mike Pence said Friday he will not be endorsing his former boss in the 2024 general election. Alright guys, I just moved a little bit into the vote for Trump camp. That right there is like one of the best endorsements I've ever seen. Oh, Mike Pence doesn't like you? Still can't do it. But I moved a little bit closer. Appearing on Fox News, Pence said he cannot in good conscience back Trump, as there are profound differences between their views on various issues. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Trump this year, Pence said after being asked by Fox News host Martha McCallum. Look, I'm incredibly proud of the record of our admin, Pence said. It was a conservative record that made America more prosperous, more secure, and saw conservatives appointed to our courts in a more peaceful world. That being said, during my campaign, I made it clear there are profound differences between me and President Trump on a range of issues. Not just in our difference in my constitutional duties that I exercised on January the 6th, Pence said. Again, that is like the most ringing endorsement out there for somebody to go back out there and vote for Trump. I don't know if I could still do it, but that is probably one of the more ringing endorsements out there for it. Let's listen to Face the Nation. Eddie X is out. Mike Pence on CBS's Face the Nation is asked about President Trump referring to January 6 prisoners as hostages and patriots. It's very unfortunate. It's just unacceptable.
Onto the stage to a song recorded by a choir of prisoners facing charges for their role in the violence of January the 6th. Take a listen.
You see the spirit from the hostages, and that's what they are, as hostages. They've been treated terribly and very unfairly, and you know that, and everybody knows that. And we're going to be working on that soon as the first day we get into office. We're going to save our country, and we're going to work with the people to treat those unbelievable patriots, and they were unbelievable patriots and are.
I know in the past you said Mr. Trump's reckless words endangered you and your family on that day. What do you think when you hear him refer to those people facing charges as hostages and patriots?
Well, I think it's very unfortunate at a time that there are American hostages being held in Gaza, that the president or any other leaders would refer to people that are moving through our justice system as hostages, and it's just unacceptable. I was there on January 6th. I have no doubt in my mind, Margaret, that some people were caught up in the moment and that entered the Capitol, and they're certainly entitled to due process of law for any nonviolent activities that day. But the assaults on police officers, ultimately an environment that claimed lives, is something that I think was tragic that day, and I'll never diminish it.
And the legal system.
Well, honestly, and again, some of them are hostages. They have no charges, they have no case, and they're just being held there for years. It's been 3 years since January the 6th, 2021. And some of these people are still in there awaiting a trial. It's a political prisoner, if nothing else. Maybe not a hostage, but definitely a political prisoner. I defended this guy, by the way, at the beginning of the admin, and even at the beginning of the Red Ned show. Working with Elaine, who used to live under this guy's governorship. And I said, no, come on, he can't be that bad. Some of this stuff is made up. You know what? I'm kicking myself in the ass for that. Texas news from the USA Today. Supreme Court lifts hold on Texas law for letting police arrest migrants who illegally enter the U.S. From Maureen Graupe and Lauren Villagran. The Supreme Court on Tuesday said Texas can, for now, use a new state law to detain and deport migrants entering or living in the U.S. A loss for Biden admin, which has been fighting with the state over how to secure the nation's southern border. The law, originally set up to go into effect on March 5th, had been on hold while it's being challenged by the DOJ. The hold was lifted over the objection of the court's 3 liberal justices. Only 2 of the liberal justices, because it went 7-2 actually. Today, the court invites further chaos and crisis in immigration enforcement. Sotomayor wrote in a dissent joined by Ketanji Brown Jackson. Texas can now immediately enforce its own law imposing criminal liability on thousands of non-citizens and requiring their removal to Mexico. Elena Kagan wrote a separate dissent. The DOJ has called the law flatly inconsistent with the court's past decisions, which recognize that the power to admit and remove non-citizens lies solely with the federal government, the department told the Supreme Court. But Texas officials said the state is the nation's first line of defense against transnational violence, and the law is needed to deal with the deadly consequences of the federal government's inability or unwillingness to protect the border. The state also argued the Supreme Court didn't have to intervene because the New Orleans-based U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit is taking the issue up in April. 2 of the conservative justices who allowed the law to go into effect, Barrett and Kavanaugh, said the DOJ can come back to the Supreme Court if the Fifth Circuit doesn't decide quickly whether the law should be paused until it's fully litigated. Before this court intervenes on the emergency docket, the Fifth Circuit should be the first mover, Barrett wrote. In addition to the federal government's challenge, the law is being fought by El Paso County, Texas, and Las Americas Immigrant Advocacy Center, which provides free legal representation to asylum seekers and other immigrants into El Paso. So, it's an interesting way that this is going, and it is ambiguous. I know that people are trying to say that it's a slam dunk case and everybody knows, and no matter what, this is always a federal issue, but I do think it's a bit more ambiguous than this, especially with the 10th Amendment. I do need to see where they're saying that it is solely the federal government's responsibility to do so. Because if it's there should be a provision for if the federal government refuses to act. So, from the Hill, Sotomayor chastises Supreme Court for allowing Texas law to stand. From Sarah Fortinsky, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor sharply rebuked the High Court's majority Tuesday for temporarily allowing a Texas law to take effect that empowers state law enforcement to arrest people they suspect of illegally entering the U.S. from Mexico. In her dissent, Sotomayor warned that in allowing this highly controversial law to take effect, without first carefully considering its constitutionality, the court invites further chaos and crisis in an immigration enforcement. Texas passed a law that directly regulates the entry and removal of non-citizens and explicitly instructs its state's courts to disregard any ongoing federal immigration proceedings, Sotomayor wrote in her dissent, which was joined by Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. The law upends the federal-state balance of power and has existed for over a century, in which the national government has exclusive authority over entry and removal of non-citizens. Well, we'll see. Now, is this they keep saying temporary. This is a temporary ruling right now. The question at hand was whether or not it could be utilized while it's being appealed. I'm a little bit mixed on this one too. Typically, laws are supposed to be on hold while they're appealed. But if it is putting a direct danger on the citizens of Texas, and again, as if the federal government is refusing to take up its duty, then the safety of the American citizenry should come first. I don't know. This, from a strictly legal standpoint, is probably one of the harder decisions that I've seen in law at this point. Whether or not you allow the law to be enforced while you're sitting here trying to litigate it back out. Well, obviously, with my stance on illegal immigration, at the rate that it's coming right now, I'm in favor of the enforcement of the law. But that's my own personal opinion. That's not looking at that from a strictly legal standpoint. From a strictly legal standpoint, it is a lot more difficult, and I don't envy the justices that had to go back and rule on that by any stretch of the imagination. The Mogwai says Texas votes to shoot illegals, to get rid of illegals, and test new gun design. Ted Cruz was quoted as saying he sees nothing wrong. Dual Helix says Supreme Court has no method to enforce their ruling. Texas is going to do what Texas wants. The problem is that they can be held liable from that if they're in violation of constitutional law. Which means that any immigrant whose family member is injured or dies in the enforcement of it can turn around and hold Texas liable. There is a legal stance for them to work from off of this, and again, it makes it a very unenviable situation for that court to be in. I don't begrudge the justices for that, for any stretch of the imagination. Again, in my personal opinion, I would say that what Texas is doing is right. But from a purely legal standpoint, it's way grayer than that. It's like when Polis said that liquor stores were non-essential and would be closed during the Pinko Pox. Yeah, that's one of the other things with that too. 10 minutes later, riots at almost every liquor store. But they were masked. Some more Supreme Court news from ABC News. Trump makes argument to Supreme Court about why he deserves presidential immunity. The justices will hear oral arguments on April 25th. The former president on Tuesday filed a brief with the Supreme Court, making his formal argument why he should be granted absolute presidential immunity from criminal prosecution, asking the justices to dismiss a 4-count federal indictment over his efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election that he lost. The High Court will hear oral arguments on that matter on April 25th. The president cannot function, and the presidency itself cannot retain its vital independence. The president faces criminal prosecution for official acts once he leaves office. Trump's attorneys wrote in their opening brief to the High Court in the U.S. versus Trump. I think that's also the name of this particular season of The Federal Apprentice, the U.S. versus Trump. Denial of criminal immunity would incapacitate every future president with de facto blackmail and extortion while in office, and condemn him to years of post-office trauma at the hands of political opponents, they argued. The threat of future prosecution and imprisonment would become a political cudgel to influence the most sensitive and controversial presidential decisions, taking away the strength, authority, and decisiveness of the presidency. Similar to arguments made in lower courts, which were unsuccessful, Trump contended that presidential immunity flows from the Constitution's executive vesting clause and the separation of powers. While the unanimous appeals court panel Resoundingly rejected the claim, Trump again implored the justices to adopt the view that only the president convicted by the Senate following an impeachment proceeding would be criminally prosecuted. This is another decision, by the way, that I don't begrudge the justices having to take up at this point. And it has to do with this. If you make a ruling like this too broad, then you will get a situation where a future president will pull out a pistol and execute somebody in cold blood, acting as the president, and can't be convicted of it if you make this ruling too broad. So when you do something like presidential immunity, it has to be a very, very, very narrow ruling to make sure it's situationally. And that is a challenge for minds that are much, much more legally talented than mine. The Constitution authorizes the criminal prosecution of a former president, but it builds an formidable structural check against politically motivated prosecutions by requiring that the majority of the House and the supermajority of the Senate to authorize such a dramatic action, Trump's team wrote. The founders thus carefully balanced the public interest in ensuring accountability for presidential wrongdoing against the mortal danger to our system of government presented by political targeting of the chief executive. Now, as I said, this is a question for a mind that is much, much more legally versed than mine. I debated going to law school at one point, but I did not. Every once in a while I still debate it, but I debated it at one point and I wound up not going to law school. So I have not implored over the volumes and volumes of text that the people who have to make the decision off of this. From what I understand of constitutional law, then yes. And as I said, in a very, very narrow ruling, it should be the case in this position based on the fact that the Donald was already tried and acquitted for this crime under the mechanism that was described. A majority of the House in impeachment and then a trial in the Senate, which resulted in an acquittal, but requiring a supermajority to force a conviction to make sure that this doesn't become a partisan tool, but also leaves in place protections for if a president starts executing his citizens on the front lawn. So, not a position I would want to be in as a judiciary, that's for sure. CNN says Trump floats method for Supreme Court to further delay his trial without giving him full immunity. I think? Yeah, this is finally the last Trump article. I said at the top of the show, this is going to be a Trumpy one, and I apologize for that. Let's see. Tierney Sneed, John Fritzie, and Devon Cole. Former President Trump told the Supreme Court on Tuesday that future presidents could be vulnerable to de facto blackmail and extortion while in office. However, the presumptive nominee also floated an alternative route for the justices if they were unwilling to accept his maximalist theory of presidential immunity that would still help him achieve the political goal of delaying a trial until after the November election. Trump's new Supreme Court brief also repeatedly referenced statements Brett Kavanaugh made before Trump nominated him to the Supreme Court in what appears to be an appeal to the justice's past experience. Trump told justices that if they're not willing to grant him full immunity from Smith's election subversion prosecution, they should send the case back to a lower court for more proceedings. A move that would push off a trial for many months to determine whether any partial theory of immunity would apply in this case. The alternative route could afford the court's conservative majority an off-ramp that would hamstring the special counsel without taking a blanket view of immunity for former presidents. No court has yet addressed the application of immunity for the alleged facts of this case, Trump's lawyers wrote, adding that applying any doctrine of immunity the Supreme Court sets out for may require discovery about the specific facts and circumstances of charged conduct. It would be an interesting idea, but again, I think that this does need to be ruled on at this point, and very narrowly at that point. It needs to be an incredibly narrow ruling. All right. That is one big block of Trump news. In a political situation where he's not even in the position to make decisions. But that's what we get when the media doesn't want to talk about Biden, I guess. But we do have some Biden news here. Couple things that I'm sure that our friends on the left don't want to talk about. Top Republican calls for canceling future Biden State of the Union speeches. From Julie Grace Brufke. Oh God, let's hope that there are no more future State of the Union speeches. Please let this moron be a one-term president. Please, please, please let this moron be a one-term president. From Julie Grace Brufke. My wallet can't handle 4 more years of this shit. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer said GOP leadership should reconsider how they invite presidents to give the State of the Union, citing President Biden's divisive speech. Emmer argued Biden's remarks were hyper-partisan campaign speech, telling Axios the president should not be invited to address Congress next year if he's elected to a second term. The Minnesota Republican said he's bullish on former President Trump's odds of defeating Biden, but felt Biden's speech should have had a more unifying tone. That was the most divisive State of the Union. I wouldn't extend him an invitation next year if that's what we're going to get, Emmer said during an interview at the House GOP retreat. Well, see, the problem with that is if he gets a second term, God help us. But if he does get a second term, well, yeah, then he's going to go back to try to unify because, let's be realistic, if he gets a second term, that will be the end of the MAGA movement as we know it. It'll be back to corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans pretending to hate each other and slapping each other on the asses when they go to the bar after they're done on TV hating each other. But there does need to be some sort of quality control to this. Because this speech was akin, at some point, to the blood red background and Biden telling the world that MAGA Republicans were the source of all their problems. In a very, very Nazi-esque speech. It wasn't as hard-edged as the Constitutional Hall speech, but it was up there. Especially given the fact that the speech is written before the president walks up and ever approaches the podium. There should be an opportunity to read what's going to come out. And yes, they should have the opportunity, if it is going to be a campaign speech, which that was, that they can come back and say, you know what, no, just go on a campaign rally. We don't want you here. In other Biden news, something else I'm sure they don't want you to know, Biden unveils massive $7.3 trillion budget with $5.5 trillion in tax hikes. Plans for the highest burden in U.S. history. From Josh Christensen. Biden unveiled his election year budget pitch on Monday, calling for $5.5 trillion in tax increases by raising rates on wealthy and corporations, which will put some of your jobs in jeopardy, by the way. Get a new skill, drop of ice, and drop about 10 pounds. But also keep in mind that there's not enough money in billionaires and corporations to cover $5.5 trillion in taxes. And your taxes are going to go up too if this goes through. The fiscal year 2025 budget, which is highly unlikely to be approved by Congress, matches last year's top-line tax increase level and spends $300 billion more, while purportedly cutting the federal deficit by $3 trillion over the next 10 years, the White House said on Monday. And of course, when they talk about what the billionaires are going to get taxed, they don't tell you about all of the loopholes and deductions that they offer to their donors. God, I hate taxes. Mine are filed at this point, by the way. Thank you to my tax accountant who occasionally watches this. But yes, mine are filed. Amazingly, I didn't have to pay in this year. But once I get the documentation, I will go back and look and see just how much my taxes went up. Now, do keep in mind, I did make a lot more money this year, but it's getting hard out there, I can tell you that. Fiscal hawks and Republicans alike were quick to call out the admin for reckless spending. The Committee for Responsible Federal Budget. Yeah, okay. Like that, something like that would exist. I mean, it exists, but they're never going to get anywhere. Noted the Office of Management and Budget estimates up to project the national debt would surge to $45.1 trillion, or 105.6% of gross domestic product by 2034, under the plan up from $27.4 trillion. Brian Reidel, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, focusing on budget and taxes, told the Post on Monday the president's proposals would saddle the U.S. with the highest sustained income tax burden in American history as a share of the economy. The president isn't simply raising taxes to close the deficit, he's raising them to expand the government, Reidel said after having called the Biden budget last year the highest peacetime burden in American history. You know what's funny about this is a lot of the DeSantis bros, the Ron bros out there, and the Democrats alike, like to point out just how recklessly Trump spent during the Pinko Pox. Notably, while Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House and the one who was bringing budget bills and spending packages down to the floor, and in that time, and this was way too much money at the time, what they're criticizing him for doing for COVID, and this is Democrats who are doing this, by the way, is $6.4 trillion, which was entirely too goddamn much money to begin with, was the COVID spending. For an, quote, emergency. And when I first started looking at this, the number at the time was $6.9 trillion, and now it's gone up another $400 million to $400 billion with a B to $7.3 trillion. There is a spending problem in this country. The Mogwai says responsible budget. Is that found next to Bigfoot and a good William Shatner non-Star Trek film? I've never seen any of the Star Trek films. Nah, I take that back. I never saw any of the original cast ones. I have seen First Contact. I like First Contact, actually. I've seen about half of Insurrection. No, I've seen all of Insurrection. I've seen the whole thing of that movie. But I can't judge Shatner's acting chops. Well, I haven't really seen any Shatner movie anyway. I've never seen the original series. I've seen a couple episodes. But that's a good analogy. But the AP's got to put its rose-colored glasses on and spin this the other way. Biden's budget proposal for a second term offers tax breaks for families and lower health care costs. No, that's what it proposes. What's going to happen in practice? When we see a $5.5 trillion tax hike? Yeah, that's going to be completely different than what we have coming off of this. If the Biden budget becomes law, deficits could be pruned to $3 trillion over a decade. It would raise tax revenues by a total of $4.9 trillion over that period, and use roughly $1.9 trillion to fund various programs, with the rest going to the deficit reduction. Can we, maybe just balance the budget, maybe? Stop the spending? Is that a possibility? I don't think so. Alright, we got some Eric Adams news. Salty Texan putting on the fake New York accent in the tweet. Beat it, you illegal bastards. New York City Mayor Eric Adams announces changes to the right to shelter law. The right to shelter law was meant for New Yorkers, not migrants. Adult migrants have 30 days to find a new location and won't be able to reapply for a new shelter. Well, I hope Eric Adams enjoyed his last term in office, because it will be his final one.
My fellow New Yorkers, today, the City of New York came to an agreement with the Legal Aid Society, which gives the city additional flexibility under the 1981 consent decree known as Callahan, that addresses the city's right to shelter. Over the last 2 years, our city has been managing an ongoing humanitarian crisis, providing shelter and care to approximately 183,000 new arrivals, a number that is larger than the population of most cities. But we have been clear since day one that the right to shelter was never intended to apply to large-scale migrant populations arriving without housing or legal work status in such a short period of time. This new agreement acknowledges the realities of where we are today, affirms our shared mission to help those in need, and grants us additional flexibility to navigate this ongoing crisis. I want to thank both the court and the Legal Aid Society for recognizing that the status quo cannot continue. It is a welcome step forward in addressing a crisis that has had far-reaching implications for our city, our people, and our values. New York City has done and will continue to do our part to manage this humanitarian crisis, but we cannot bear the brunt of this crisis along with just a handful of other cities. We will continue to seek significant support from our federal partners, including expedited work authorizations, more funding, and a national resettlement strategy. And we will continue to call on Congress to pass long overdue immigration reform.
So I wonder who's going to come forward and say that Mayor Adams groped her. I wonder what they're going to do to try to get him out of office at this point, because, yeah, he's doomed. Because now he's pointing out that there's actually a problem. Well, if you're in New York and this actually holds true, it's already very interesting with the National Guard on your subways, checking you for weapons before you get back on, and it's about to get even more interesting. So, good luck. I love you all dearly, but good luck. the one that the Mogwai has been waiting for. We got this and a Daily Wire follow-up to it. We've got the Olivia Rodrigo story, and then we are done with the main news. And we'll do things I like and things that I hate. From the Hill, Graham meets with Zelensky in the Ukraine. From Miranda Nazaro. This is, of course, Lindsey Graham. Senator Lindsey Graham met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Monday as further funding for the war-torn country remains in limbo amid divisions in Congress. Zelensky hosted Graham in Kiev, where the two discussed aid for the Ukraine, the Ukrainian army's needs for the Eastern European nations' eventual integration into NATO. The Ukrainian leader wrote in a post on X, formerly known as Twitter. Graham's visit comes just weeks after he voted against a $95 billion defense and foreign aid package in the Senate. The bill included $60 billion for Ukraine, included $19.5 billion to restock the U.S. military weapons provided from the Pentagon inventory, and $13.8 billion to allow Ukraine to buy weapons and munitions from U.S. industry. Which is a shock that Lindsey Graham voted against it because, well, he has got probably more stock in these defense contractors than most in Congress, and that is saying something. Did I drop? So my drop frames were set to 0. But my stream and record times are the same. They're still going up. Did I drop? Shit. I'm sorry. I had no idea. I didn't get an alert or anything. Yeah, I guess I'm showing only 4:15. Well, what the fuck? Well, for those of you who lost me out in the drop, and YouTube is still actually showing me live too. I wonder if it was something on Twitch's end. Because, like, if I dropped on... if I dropped completely from... Where was I going with this? If I dropped completely from OBS and online, it would have dropped it and started a completely new stream on YouTube. But keep in mind, by the way, that you can watch the replay that I'll put up for tomorrow morning on YouTube that was done by recording, not by what's on the stream. So any dropped frames will be all missing and it'll all be just a smooth recording again. And it'll be the same for the Spotify in the morning. Yeah, I didn't see any of that. I just saw the Mogwai say, "Oh, you're back." That's interesting. Alright, anyway. Keep going. We're almost done. Defending his vote last month, Graham pointed out his concerns about the border. Helix, did I drop over there? Oh, well, my audience over on Rumble dropped to 0 anyway, so... Zelensky reiterated his plea to the U.S. on Monday to continue sending aid in support of Ukraine. "It is critical our partners continue to provide military and technical assistance, such as air defense and missile," Zelensky wrote on X, adding later, "Continued support of Ukraine by international partners, particularly United States, is now more important than ever in implementing plans to deoccupy territory and protect people." In a video of Zelensky's remarks, the president told Graham he's thankful for Congress and the Biden admin's support over the past 2 years, and asked the lawmaker what he thinks about future support for the nation. In the short clip in the beginning of the meeting, Graham offered a stark prediction for Russian President Putin. Putin will go down in history, sugar, and not go down the way that I think he's gonna. He'll go down in history all the way, and all the way all people like Putin go down in history. It's just a matter of time. Okay, maybe he was talking about that way. In a statement later shared with The Hill, Graham said he had a productive visit with Zelensky about the state and future of the war. He said he's calling on Biden admin to send a longer-range artillery, accelerate F-16 training for Ukrainians, and designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism, which is, as I always say, a symbolic gesture. But the Daily Wire is saying he has floated a Trump loan idea for Ukrainian aid, which I'm going to go right out on a limb and say that I'm against that too, because we're never going to see that money again, I can tell you that. Daniel Chayton reporting. The Mogwai says Lindsey Graham was quoted as saying, "You lick my rim and I'll lick yours." Talking about margaritas, of course. On Monday, Lindsey Graham said he raised former President Trump's idea for a loan to Ukraine while meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky. A post to X from Graham said he had a very productive visit with Zelensky and other Ukrainian officials about the state of Ukraine's war against Russia, during which the U.S. had already given tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine and what lies ahead. Graham said he informed Zelensky that Trump's idea of turning aid from the U.S. into a no-interest waivable loan is the most likely path forward, given the border crisis and overwhelming debt by the U.S. But again, I'm telling you right now, we're never going to see that money again if we give it as a loan. It will be gone. I'm not into it. I'm telling you that right now. Alright. And for the opening song lyrics for the show. I have hair in my mouth somehow. I don't know how. I thought that was going to stop when I cut my hair. The opening lyrics of the show were from Olivia Rodrigo because she is in the news. And there's that one song that I actually know of hers. From Business Insider, Olivia Rodrigo's team won't allow free contraceptives to be handed out on tour anymore. A controversy that popped up for a bit over the weekend from Eve Crosby. The remainder of Olivia Rodrigo's Guts tour will no longer feature reproductive rights groups handing out free emergency contraceptives, lube, and condoms following the widespread media attention brought on by her recent Missouri show, according to reports. The Grammy winner, who has partnered with the National Network of Abortion Funds for her latest tour, has allowed local rights groups to set up booths and venues in the North American leg of her tour since it kicked off in February. However, according to Variety, after news of free morning after pills that the Missouri Abortion Fund distributed at her St. Louis show went viral last week, the singer's management team has requested the future reproductive rights groups to refrain from giving out emergency contraceptives at the upcoming show. So, I kind of like this, actually. Not the fact that we're giving out the emergency contraception, but the fact that they're being pulled back to stop at this point. So, if you're at a concert, yeah, it should be available. And if somebody has the charitable mind to do so for free, that you get protection. Because, you know, the young kids are out there, the hormones are high, the emotions are high. You're crammed in with a bunch of people, and there are pheromones all over the place. And you should protect yourself. But the plan B is it's over the counter now, but this is an actual medicine. There are people who might be allergic to it. There are people who might have problems with some of the ingredients that should not be bringing it up and taking it like candy, especially, again, they're children at the show. And realistically, if one of them were to be allergic to one of the ingredients in a Plan B pill, have a violent allergic reaction at the age of 16, let's go 15. Now, Rodrigo is bringing up the point because their kid's as young as maybe 12 or 13 at the show, but let's say at 15, the girl thinks that she went too far, forgot the condom, and just needs to go run and grab that Plan B, that morning after pill. Takes it, has a severe allergic reaction because she's allergic to one of the ingredients. Guess who in this chain of events has the deepest pockets? That would be one Miss Olivia Rodrigo. And I guarantee you that was the point of contention. Now, of course, the conservative groups who saw this happening, saying this is happening to kids, were what put that story up into the news and made it really public. I think they could have slipped this under the table and forgotten about it had these parental groups not brought this up. But the management probably also weighed the fact of, oh shit, if one of these kids comes to the show and gets an allergic reaction, we'll use an allergic reaction as the example, but there are far, far worse things that could happen because of this. But gets an allergic reaction, 15 years old. We're liable, dude. And Olivia Rodrigo, as I pointed out, has very, very, very deep pockets. Yahoo Entertainment with a follow-up on this one. Olivia Rodrigo's Plan B handouts were reportedly not her choice. I don't know if I believe that. I think that is plausible deniability. Kelly Coffee Barons. While Olivia Rodrigo is getting slammed by fans and media outlets for handing out Plan B and condoms, new claims are revealing it was not the singer's idea. At the Vampire Artist's recent St. Louis concert, her fan base received birth control options after Missouri announced a ban on all abortions, except to save the life of a pregnant person. Photos shared X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, show the handouts Rodrigo's fans received at the show. The distribution came after Missouri began enforcing a trigger ban, which bans all abortions except to save the life of the pregnant person, according to the Center for Reproductive Rights. This comes following the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe and the case Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health, something Rodrigo has spoken out about on numerous occasions. The Missouri Abortion Fund is now claiming that while the Good For You artists invited their organizers to set up spaces at her concert arenas, it was not her choice to hand out the birth control options. It was our decision to pass out EC, said the Missouri Abortion Fund, telling Rolling Stone. Again, that is a CYA right there. Because again, in this particular story, who has the deepest pockets? Dual Helix says, Rumble froze up for me. Couldn't even F5. Weird. I don't know. According to the Mogwai, we actually dropped connection for a little while. So I don't know if that had something to do with it or what the story was, but again, once we do the replay is done on the recording, not on the stream. So I will private the stream after I'm done, and then re-upload the recording that I took with a video. So the full context of what you missed while I was apparently blanked off the screen will be available to you. The Mogwai says, you know that picture of Putin riding the bear shirtless sugar? I'd love to see that. I'd make sure Putin knows where I stand on the Ukraine. Oh, I'm sorry, I need a moment. I got the vapors. Alright, that's all the news that we have for today. Let's do a couple things that I like and a couple things that I hate. It's a kind of short one still, so I think there are only, plus the rules of acquisition, 9 tabs over here. So we'll get through this one pretty quick. The ad blocker's begging for donations. with this docked here. You stay there. All right. The rules of acquisition, for those unfamiliar, are a group of rules, mainly commandments for the Ferengi religion of hypercapitalism, especially among other species in the galaxy. There are 431 of these rules, probably about 197 total in canon that we have to read from. Every week we read one of these rules, we determine what it meant in canon and if it can be used in our real life. And as a hyper communist, the creator of the show Roddenberry put us in a position where some of these cannot be used in real life because, well, they're that bad. All right. We left off on the 286th rule of acquisition on Saturday. When Warren leaves, it's all over. The 287th rule of acquisition from a DS9 comic and Vector. Always get someone else to do the lifting. A basic employment situation. So if you are your business leader and you're organizing, you're making sure everybody else is getting in, employed, able to make profit of their own, but not as much as you, of course, because you are the boss, then you do need to protect yourself as well. And you can hire people to do that. So you always get someone else to do the lifting. Now, I take this in a different direction, and this is my views on management, is that everybody who is in management or supervisory should be at least able to, if not willing to, do the jobs that they're delegating out to other people. That is a thing that you should be doing and should have to do. But just because you're able and willing to doesn't mean that you should, of course. That's why you have employees. That's why you pay people. You should be able to do it in a pinch, but of course, if all things are green, all lights are ready to go, and everything is working perfectly, then yes. Always get somebody else to go and do your lifting for you. Alright, let's do a couple things I like and a few things that I hate. Things that I like. On the theme of what I've been watching on streaming services. I actually put up the money in, well, I rented, I didn't buy it, but the digital copy of a movie that I saw very recently before I started getting majorly into politics. Now, at the time I saw this movie, I was already into Ed's blog, the written format that I express myself politically on. But I had not started really deeply analyzing the way that I do for contemporary or making videos on analysis of the topic. I went and watched this movie again after having analyzed politics, and holy shit. This movie is terrifying. But it's still a good movie and I enjoy it. I'm of course talking about The Hunger Games. A dystopian future movie about an America that was ravaged by a war, a civil war, and the victors taking up capital in approximately the Colorado region now hold the masses who attempted to uprise against them into a position of servitude, and because of the fact that they tried to rise up, each one of their new states, which are called districts, have to offer up 2 of their children every year for a battle royale to the death, in which only one of them can survive. Basically an excuse to kill off 23 of their kids from the people who try to rise up against them every year. Fantastic movie, but again, if you think about it, and I thought hard about it too, realizing the progressives and MAGA would be the ones out in the districts putting up their kids if this were to happen in real life. And it's, I think, a possibility at this point here. But let's watch the trailer for the 2012 movie The Hunger Games. And before I even watch the trailer, I will recommend you, if you've not seen this movie yet, and I do think I was one of the last people to ever see it, read the book first. The book is way better. The movie actually follows the book to an extent, not like Divergent, which, well, diverges, for lack of a better word. They took way too much creative liberty on the Divergent movies. But if you get a chance, go check out this movie if you haven't already. Let's watch the trailer.
We could do it, you know. Take off, live in the woods.
They'd catch us.
Well, maybe not.
We wouldn't make it 5 miles.
Welcome, welcome. The time has come to select one courageous young man and woman for the honor of representing District 12 in the 74th Annual Hunger Games.
It's your first year, Prim. Your name's only been in there once. They're not gonna pick you.
Primrose Everdeen.
Prim! I volunteer! I volunteer as tribute.
Our tributes, Peter Malark and Katniss Everdeen.
They just want a good show. That's all they want.
There's 24 of us, Gail. Only one comes out. So you're here to make me look pretty?
I'm here to help you make an impression.
And so it was decreed that each year, the 12 districts of Pan Am shall offer up in tribute one young man and woman between the ages of 12 and 18 to be trained in the art of survival and to be prepared to fight to the death.
This is the time to show them everything. Make sure they remember you.
I just keep wishing I could think of a way to show them that they don't own me. If I'm gonna die, I want to still be me.
I just can't afford to think like that.
Again, if you have not seen this movie, watch it. It is a fantastic political tale, and the whole series is wonderful. It's a little terrifying, especially if you are on the out and out group. And I know it came off in that one point in time where it was supposed to be all super girl power, and I'll tell you right off the bat, Katniss, in spite of Jennifer Lawrence's crazy ideas herself, Katniss is a very traditional female character. She's got the strength and everything, but she has a very, very traditional feminine side too. If you've never read the book or seen the movie, you would see it reading through the books and watching the movie. It is there. It's not just girl boss all the time. It's part of the reason that especially the Divergent movies turned me off. And I did like those books. And let's not kid ourselves. Dark-haired Jennifer Lawrence is probably one of the most beautiful women on the planet. I don't like her so much as blonde. She's my age. That's weird for me. She's just crazy, and she's my age. I don't typically go after women that are close to my age, but I don't know. So there's something about dark-haired Jennifer Lawrence that gets me. All right. Other things that I like today. Thomas Massey. Defending the Constitution can get you labeled a libertarian anarchist by Republicans in Congress. No offense taken, Majority Whip. I appreciate being dissociated from the current mess here in D.C. Let's hear what Tom Emmer, the Majority Whip, has to say. We talked about him a little bit earlier, too.
You talk about the Majority Leader and the Speaker. The reason that we are key to what happens in the House is because I can have relationships with Brian Fitzpatrick, who would be considered right of center, suburban Philadelphia, all the way to Thomas Massey, who's a libertarian anarchist, he would say libertarian, from Kentucky, and everybody in between. And you need to know what drives them, what they can and can't do. You talk about the majority leader and the speaker. The reason that we are key to what happens
disdain
in the House.
yeah, I mean, the Uniparty has a deep disdain for those of us who are anti-government, Massey included. Now, I've had my differences with Massey, don't get me wrong, but I know he is, for the most part, on the anti-government side. So, good on him for putting Emmer back in his place where it needed to be. I think that it might be the way. Dual Helix says, how do they pick the whip? Everyone votes who is the biggest doofus? I think that actually might be it. This is the way. And the last one on things that I like. Supreme Court warns public officials not to block critics on social media. From Hank Berrien. On Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court warned public officials could get in trouble for blocking critics on social media. The case rose after James Freed created a private Facebook profile before 2008, later converting his profile to a public page. In 2014, Freed updated his Facebook page to note his new job as city manager of Port Huron, Michigan, but still posted about his personal life. He also posted information related to his job, responded to comments on his post, and occasionally deleted comments he considered derogatory or stupid. After the pinko pox began, Freed posted personal and job-related posts related to it. Facebook user Kevin Linkey commented on some of Freed's posts, saying he disagreed with the city's pinko pox policies. At first, Freed deleted Linkey's comments and later blocked him from commenting. Linkey then sued, claiming Freed had violated his First Amendment rights and that he had the right to comment because the page was a public forum. The district court ruled for Freed in Linkey versus Freed. The Sixth Circuit affirmed the decision. The court warned that public officials face a high risk of liability when they operate a mixed-use social media page, i.e. posting both public and private topics, and then block people from that page. JDSupra.com noted. The Supreme Court vacated the judgment of the Sixth Circuit and remanded the case for further proceedings, writing a public official who prevents someone from commenting on the official's social media page engages in state action under Statute 1983 only if the official both possessed actual authority to speak on the state's behalf in a particular matter and purported to exercise that authority when speaking in the relevant social media posts. The court explained Section 1983 provides cause of action against every person who, under color of any statute, ordinance, regulation, custom, or usage of any states deprives someone of federal constitutional statutory right. Section 1983's under color of text makes clear that its provision designed as a protection against acts attributable to the state, not those of a private person. Okay. Can politicians block you? I am a little bit mixed on this one. An official government public page, like the page for Rep. Eric Swalwell, who actually has me blocked, oddly enough. His personal page doesn't. That's the one, which is surprising. And the decision's still up in the air. But it looks like it is going to go in the favor of the plaintiffs in this one. The issue with this, of course, is at what level do people have access to you and have constitutional access to you as a taxpayer-funded person who is the authority to speak on behalf of the state. And I do think that, especially the official pages, shouldn't have any ability to block at least their constituents. Now, me, not being a resident of the state of California, or the district that Swalwell is in, while I disagree with the fact that he has me blocked, I think everybody should be able to hear my opinions. I am not a constituent of his, therefore I do not demand access to him. I call his ass out every once in a while, but I'm in no position to say I have to have access. Now, whereas if the @POTUS account were to block me, then that would be in direct violation of the First Amendment and my ability to redress grievances against the government. A little bit gray whether or not the Joe Biden account would be able to do so. But the other question comes up over the @RealDonaldTrump handle versus the POTUS handle. So, again, there are still going to be some questions as to what is right and what isn't, but I know that they're getting faced down, and I like the fact that a lot of stuff is now getting solidified where there was ambiguity before. Now let's do a few things that I hate. The Associated Press, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, bought and paid for by the liberal justices to decide if counties must release voter incompetency records. Yes. No author given. The Wisconsin Supreme Court will decide if counties must release voter incompetency records. The Wisconsin Voters Alliance sued Walworth County's Register in probate in 22, seeking records indicating a judge had found someone incompetent to vote. The group has alleged the number of ineligible voters doesn't match tallies in the state's public voter database. The 2nd District Court of Appeals held the records are public and the county must release them with the birth dates and case numbers redacted. Which, okay, that's fair. The county's Register in probate, Christina Secord, asked the Supreme Court to review that ruling. The court issued a 2-page order on Tuesday saying it would take the case. The offer no other details beyond mandating that the first briefs be filed within 30 days. The people of the county have the right to know whether or not there are people ineligible to vote voting in their elections. You can go to links to make sure that the information is privatized to a point that you can't go back up to somebody's door and say, hey, why the fuck are you voting in the election? But yes, the people have the right to know that. Because it gives them the opportunity to challenge the results if there is a problem or there's a discrepancy between the two. You want to know how I bet the court's going to rule, though? I bet you it's going to be the opposite of what I just said. In other news, which may wind up being Gamergate 2 from the U.S. Government Accountability Office. Countering violent extremism. The FBI and DHS need strategies and goals for sharing threat information with social media and gaming companies. Domestic terrorists pose a significant threat to the U.S. according to FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. Domestic terrorists often use online platforms such as social media and gaming to communicate radical ideas to a wide audience and mobilize like-minded people. Guys, am I radicalizing you right now? Is that what's happening? Are you being radicalized by listening to the news be analyzed? Or am I just radicalizing you when we play Final Fantasy X on Wednesday nights or Fallout on Fridays? The FBI and DHS has some tools for sharing information with and receiving information from social media and gaming companies on threats related to domestic terrorism, but neither agency has developed strategies and goals related to such information sharing efforts. We recommend that the FBI and DHS develop these strategies and goals. Domestic violent extremists use social media and gaming platforms for several purposes, including to reach wide audiences, to insert their extremist ideas into the mainstream, and to radicalize, recruit, and mobilize others. According to government reports and experts, the Government Accountability Office spoke with C-Figure. Experts noted that violent extremists generally use a variety of platforms for different purposes, depending on available features, audiences, and content moderation practices. According to social media and gaming companies the Government Accountability Office met with, They use various content moderation tools to identify and remove content they determine violates their platforms. Policies related to domestic violent extremism on their platforms, for example. They report using machine learning tools to scan for content that violates their policies, as well as reviews by employees. However, companies and experts reported that several factors affected these moderation efforts, such as company financial considerations and diversity and standards of acceptable content. For example, content banned on one platform could be allowed on another. It's Gamergate 2, you guys. They're going to do this again. My big question is when did Anita Sarkeesian start working in the Government Accountability Office? Realistically, what they're going to do, of course, is give sponsorships to the girls who bring in the big audience. And the people like me who are strongly anti-government, but remind everybody not to do anything that is going to get you killed because I want you here watching my content. I might be too extreme for these people, but I also know that I already have my own FBI agents, so there's really no question there. So, yes, they are actually doing it again. Couple other things that I hate. New York Post says new exercise pill could replace physical benefits of working out, according to study. According to Pfizer, perhaps, from Brooke Steinberg. Tired of working out? Actually, I'm not. There might be soon a pill for that. A new exercise pill could potentially replace some, if not all, of the benefits of working out, according to a new study. Scientists from the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis spent 10 years creating new compounds that seem to be able to mimic the physical benefits of a workout, at least in rodent cells, that could become ingredients for a future supplement. A team of researchers who presented their findings at the spring meeting of the American Chemical Society hope to replicate the physical effects of exercise, specifically the ability to enhance metabolism and growth, as well as improved muscle performance. We cannot replace exercise. Exercise is important on all levels. Baha El-Gendi, professor of anesthesiology and the project's principal investigator, said in a media release, "If I can exercise, I should go ahead and get the physical activity, but there are so many cases where a substitute is needed." So, what the investigator is saying, of course, is that they're going to do this for paraplegics, people in a wheelchair, people with a broken leg or some other sort of injury, or people who otherwise normally cannot run out and go and exercise. But you know who's going to wind up mostly using this is people who are physically able and capable and just don't want to. Get out there, touch grass. My biggest regret last week was the fact that I didn't have the opportunity to do so. I love sitting here and doing the news for you guys. Don't get me wrong. This is probably one of my highlights of my week. And when I get to do it 3 times, I enjoy that as well. I like doing it every day. But there are ranges of bluffs and mountains sitting out there that are begging to be climbed. Trails begging to be jogged. Bikes begging to be ridden. And wood begging to be hauled. And I love getting my physical workout as I go. I have no interest in something like this. And again, the intents are good and pure, so they say, but I know who's going to go and use this stuff as well. In today's Everything is Fine news, corporate defaults are happening at the fastest pace since financial crisis, according to S&P. Drop a vice, drop 10 pounds, get another income stream, because nobody's coming to save you. Companies around the world are defaulting on their debt at the fastest pace since the global financial crisis, as interest rates and stubborn inflation continues to take their toll, according to a report from the S&P Global Rankings. Is this archived? Because I only have half the article here. It was archived. Thank you. According to the S&P, the number of corporate defaults has climbed to 29 since the start of the year, the most highest tally at this point in a year since '09. While the majority of defaults occurred in the U.S., an uptick in European bankruptcies is alarming analysts. Since January, 8 European companies have defaulted, more than double the 3-digit defaults that had been seen at this point since 2023. By comparison, 17 defaults occurred in the U.S., slightly less than the 18 seen at this juncture from last year. While the U.S. has seen a plurality of defaults, Europe has seen the companies fail to make payments on their debt obligations at twice the rate of any year since '08. But don't worry, everything's fine. Stop worrying about the economy, you bigot. If you don't think you're in a good economy right now, that means that you're a racist. And the last thing. She's back, you guys. She got back on a plane, oddly enough. The thing that she was afraid to death of. Tom Elliott says ABC's Sarah Haynes on The View. To Christine Blasey Ford. Even today, some people remain skeptical of your story. It's me. I'm people.
Yes. Well, you've been called a highly credible witness, and you have a PhD in psychology. You're a professor. You teach at Palo Alto and Stanford universities. But even today, some people remain skeptical of your story. And you write that during the hearing, Senator Lindsey Graham wouldn't even make eye contact with you. Were you prepared for that kind of response?
Well, that's just because she's a woman. And he only wants to make eye contact with men. We'll listen to the rest of this clip in just a sec, but the fact that this woman is still getting a platform, and I have been very consistent about my view on this. In the Trump and Carroll case, the only two people in the world who will ever know what actually happened in that dressing room are Donald John Trump and Elizabeth Jean Carroll. Nobody else in the world will ever know what happened there. Between Biden and Tara Reade, the only two people who will ever know for sure what happened in that hallway are Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. and Tara Reade. Everyone else can speculate and will come to their own conclusion, mostly based on partisan leanings. But those are the only two people who will ever know what happened in that room. With Joseph Biden and Ashley Biden, the only two people who know what happened in that shower are Joe Biden and Ashley Biden. Nobody else in the world will ever know. There are a lot of people who will speculate, who can speculate, but those are the only two people who will ever know for 100% certainty. And the same thing with Ford. There are a lot of holes that can be blown in this story, but Sarah Haynes says, oh, but you are a credible witness. A lot of people said you were a credible witness. The only two people who will know for a fact what happened in that bedroom, if anything, are Brett Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford. Period. Full stop. Everyone else can sit back and speculate. And they'll come to a conclusion mostly based on their partisan leaning. But those are the only two people who will ever know for sure what happened there.
I was prepared ahead of time that none of the Republicans were going to speak with me, and they were going to use an outside interviewer. And so I was actually surprised at how kind some of the other Republican senators were who broke that protocol and said hello.
Who was that? Can you name a good one?
Senator Flake and Senator Sass both came over and said
neither
hello.
one's in Congress anymore, right? Yeah.
But still a credit. There.
Yeah,
yes,
credit.
good for them.
Both good men. Yeah.
Yes.
Will you?
All right. And the reason that she's coming up and getting on The View to go back and revisit this, because she has a memoir coming out. She wrote a book. How I Tried to Take Down a Supreme Court Justice. I don't know what the book is actually called. I'm not going to read it. The Morning Spew says, did she buy a new face? Because it looks like she bought a new face. I guess she couldn't stand to look at herself in the mirror. And a lot of other people speculating that there's some plastic surgery based on the money the DNC paid her. I cannot confirm or deny she was paid by the DNC to do this. I have my suspicions, but again, the only two people who will know are her and the DNC. And that's it. We're done. We're out of here. Not a moment too soon. I was getting black-pilled again. Could you tell? I could tell. It gets that way sometimes. It was a good night. Saw a name in here that I need to go reach out to over on the Twitch side. I'll have to do some editing and making sure everything comes together. But again, the recording will make this seem seamless. And all you'll have to do is hear me talk about, oh, hey, we went off air for a little while apparently, and I didn't even see it. Should we go? Should we be done? What do you think? I think we should. Where's my outro music? Oh yeah, that's right. My computer restarted on its own on Sunday. Came out of my bedroom from folding laundry and found I was on not my opening screen, my lock screen. I hate when they just force the update and push it through. Whew! Well, it was a long one, but we got through everything, so I'm going to use Thursday to go clean up a little closet that I live in. But thanks everybody who came by and hung out and chatted in the live chat. It was a lot of fun. It was a great night. I was glad to see everybody as well. We'll be back here tomorrow to play some more Final Fantasy X and see if we can't get up to a point where I can finally finish the game and we can move on to something else, because there's so much else that I want to do. Otherwise, we'll be back on Friday if Fallout is more your speed for Fallout Friday as well. Definitely looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you here for more of that. Thank you everybody who has followed, subscribed. We are at 4 subscriber points, which means a little bit of cash in my pocket, and I'm going to take off for the night. So take care. Have a good night. I will go to work right now, re-uploading the recording, getting it up to the audio platform. You'll have the audio platform on Spotify yet tonight, and new video in the morning. Quest Fanning will go back and share that out. Thank you to Quest Fanning for sharing that out every week, and 3 times a week when it happens 3 times a week when we need to. Take care. Have a good night. We will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.